Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Horseman, data evangelist with DATAVERSITY. Thank you for joining the latest in the monthly webinar series, Data Architecture Strategies with Donna Burbank. Today, Donna will discuss building a data strategy, practical steps for aligning with business goals, sponsored by CData. Just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. For questions, we will be collecting them by the Q&A panel. If you would like to chat with us or chat with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. And just to note, the chat defaults to send to just the panelists, but you may absolutely switch that to network with everyone. To open the chat or the Q&A panels, you'll find the icons for those features in the bottom middle of your screen. As always, we will send a follow-up email within a couple of business days containing links to the slides, a recording of this session, and any additional information requested throughout the webinar. Now, let me turn it over to Jared for a brief word from our sponsor, CData. Jared, hello and welcome.
Hello, Mark. Thank you so much for having us. I am going to do this thing where I try to share my screen and we hope that it goes right. So I think it's right. We should be
That
seeing
looks
the
great to
screen.
me. Yep. Yep,
Awesome.
looks good.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to hear from Donna as well. My name is Jared Johnson. I am a senior technology evangelist with CData Software, and I just want to spend the next few minutes talking about how you can enhance your data strategy with CData Software, the data connectivity company. So we're going to start with a problem. So creating a data foundation for your business is simultaneously urgent and complicated. As we go through reports, as reports are published, we're learning that there is more data than ever. And actually, in a recent report, 62% of IT leaders said that their organizations weren't ready for AI based on the state of their data. So they had not yet established a strategy to help solve their AI problems or help fuel their AI initiatives. We've reported we've written our own reports that says that over half of IT professionals spend more than half of their work week servicing these data requests instead of spending time on their actual IT initiatives. Other reports are stating that this exponential growth of data is real. That as more and more industries grow and as more and more companies pop up, everybody gets best of breed choice for their services, for their applications. So you get the best CRM that you need, you get the best accounting solution that you need, you get the best database, data warehouse, data lakehouse, data mart, whatever it is that you need. There are so many options, but this leads to complications because now there are more places where your data is than ever. And as each application gets more specialized, you're adopting more and more of them every cycle as you go through and expand your business and try to drive and build growth. And so with all of this complexity, there's an increasing demand for these for integration between all of these data sources and the tools that organizations are using to get value from their data. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the questions that our customers ask themselves as they go through trying to build their data strategy. Sometimes we get to come alongside them as a strategic partner as they're looking to build this out. And I think the most important thing to start with is, what are your business goals? So what is it that you're actually trying to solve for? Do you need more leads? Do you need more downloads? Do you need, you need higher AOV on all of your purchases? Are you looking to reach a wider audience? Are you looking to grow in diversity amongst the demographic of your audience? Whatever those outcomes are, that gives you a place to work backwards to start asking questions to figure out how you should define your data strategy. And those questions, as we see them, where's your data now? Where does it need to be? Is your data in the cloud? Is it on premise? Does it need to be in both places? What is your tolerance for staleness? Are you looking at historical reporting? Are you looking at real-time analytics? Are you looking at both? How are you going to support modern data tooling? So as I mentioned, there are more tools and applications available than ever before. A lot of our data tends to live in legacy systems. How are you handling that? And then what environments do you need to support? Are you beholden to compliance regulations? Does your data need to stay in specific regions for different rules based on your organization or your use case? And so these are all questions that we see asked. And we're not going to answer those questions for you, but once you know the answers to those questions, we can provide solutions. So if you have your data somewhere where it doesn't need to be and you need to move it somewhere else, then we have ETL and ELT processes that allow you to do that. Do you need to build a centralized source of truth for your analytics? Do you need real-time data? We can provide a semantic layer or data virtualization to provide that. Are you looking to accelerate your tech stack modernization? Are you sitting on top of legacy systems with tons of person hours spent in building out reports and analytics architecture on top of those legacy systems? But because of your business needs, you need to migrate to modern data systems, but maintain the original reports. We can help solve that problem as well through drop-in connectivity solutions that allow your existing analytics and data architecture to talk to the modern systems that you need to adopt in the same way that they talk to the legacy systems that you were using. And lastly, what does your environment look like? Do you need to connect data across different environments? Do you have data on premises? Do you have data in different regions, different servers? These are all solutions that we can provide as we develop our data connectivity platform. So what is it that we actually offer? So we kind of have a choose your own adventure approach to helping you solve your data strategy. You can use some or all of the different pieces that we provide. So if you need live data access, we have a cloud-based tool called CData Connect that allows for live connectivity to cloud data. We have a more thoroughly architected data virtualization tool called CData Virtuality. If you're looking for data movement, if you want to build those data pipelines, we have CData Sync that can be hosted on premises in the cloud or in hybrid environments that allows you to build ELT and ETL processes, so extract, transform, and load, or extract, load, and transform processes as you go through. And we've got this entire platform built out. So I'll run quickly through, some customer stories. The questions are up there. Are you looking to consolidate operational data into a central repository? Are you moving data from on-premises to cloud? Are you deploying a data fabric, a data mesh, data governance? We have customers doing that. Are you building rapid pipelines for comprehensive reporting? Are you scaling your IT infrastructure? Are you connecting data between specific systems? We have solutions for that as well. Got a great quote from Google, but I'm being told that I'm at time. So you can actually check out that quote and Chai's presentation from CData Foundations if you scan the QR code on the right. And if you're interested in downloading any of our free trials, you can use the QR code there on the left and get started with either a free 14 or a 30-day trial of any of our solutions. So again, thanks for the time. Thanks for your patience. I will turn things back over to Mark now.
Thank you very much, Jared, and thank you for that brief introduction to CData. Now, let me introduce to you the speaker of our monthly series, Donna Burbank. Donna is a recognized industry expert in information management with over 20 years of experience helping organizations enrich their business opportunities through data and information. She is currently the managing director of Global Data Strategy Limited, where she assists organizations around the globe in driving value from their data. She has worked with dozens of Fortune 500 companies worldwide in the Americas, Europe, Asia, and Africa, and speaks regularly at industry conferences. She has co-authored several books on data management and is a regular contributor to industry publications. And with that, I'll give the floor to Donna. Hello and welcome, my friend.
Hello, always a pleasure. Thanks for that lovely introduction from both yourself and Jared. And as Mark mentioned, this is a series. So if this is the first time joining this series, welcome. If you are new to the series, one of the many great things that DATAVERSITY offers is all of the previous recordings in perpetuity on their website. We also link to that from our own website at Global Data Strategy. So if you missed anything in the past, or one of the often most common questions is, can we get a copy of this after as a recording? Absolutely. So take a look for that. And if any of the future topics are of interest to you, we hope to see you on a future webinar. And as you'll see, folks are definitely not shy in the DATAVERSITY audience, and we always enjoy kind of having the chat and definitely the Q&A at the end. So what are we talking about today? Data strategy. And just that word can sound so daunting, right? Strategy. And your manager might have asked you to put one together, and you're wondering what the heck does that mean and where do I start? So that's really the goal of today's webinar. Excuse me. I'm coming over a bit of a cold, so if I cough, I apologize. What we do for a living at the company that I work for, which is called Global Data Strategy, it literally is in our name. We do these all the time, and I think we've come up with a good way of kind of demystifying it. And I'm going to try to add some of that and some of the anecdotes as we go, because I think that's one of the worst things about a strategy. It just sounds too in the clouds, highfalutin, when really it should be very practical and offer absolute concrete business value. And I would agree with, Jared's comment on that, of all of this needs to be driven by the business drivers, right? So getting that mix, it is a challenge, right? Because you're really wearing several hats, from the technology to the business and everything in between. So I'll kind of go through, hopefully not feeling like a whirlwind, but I will give you just kind of a high level. I mean, this can and is a whole week course, right? If you wanted to you really delve into this. But hopefully, I mean, that is often, when I'm at a conference or I'm at a session and people kind of come up after, that's almost one of the most common questions, like, what are the pieces of it and where do I start? It just feels really big. So when we do these, full disclosure, we're still sharing some of our special sauce with you guys. Just break it down into 4 main components. Don't skip any of them, I guess I would say, from my experience. When a strategy goes wrong, it's that we tried to speed things up and we skip something. So you don't have to spend years on each of these steps. In fact, we usually spend a couple weeks on each of these steps if you do it right, but don't skip them. And the first one is the absolutely most important, which is why we're doing this. And I know that sounds obvious, but the amount of, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone I've worked with you on a strategy in the past, but often we are brought in to kind of help an ailing data strategy, or why did a data strategy go wrong? And so I've kind of seen it all. Sometimes it's, what's your data strategy? And no offense to any technology I'll mention, but we're moving to Databricks. That is not a strategy at best. That's a tactic, right? But why? What are you trying to do? What does good look like at the end of this? And are you involving the business? This should be a business sponsored issue, event, this data strategy. And who from the business do we talk to? It should be a mix of people from the executive team to people in the field facing these issues, wanting to solve these issues, build new things, and how do we show value. And whether it's explicit ROI, it really depends. When we do these, sometimes we will do a full financial ROI analysis. But even if you don't go to that level of complexity, even just those anecdotes of, and Jared mentioned some, we're trying to understand our customers better, we're trying to sell more product, we're trying to get a higher margin on our product, right? All of that are data-driven business goals, right? And I don't want to only talk about kind of for profit. It could be, how do we better serve our patients and things like that, right? And then you do need to take an honest look at your current state, and that's across a lot of areas. It's your technical data landscape. We'll talk a bit about that. This is an architecture series of, are we talking COBOL, or are we talking, a modern data stack? What are some of the technical issues, and how mature overall is our data management practice, right? It isn't all just about data architecture and data. It's data governance, data quality, all of those things. And are we aligning in the way we're working with industry best practices? It is a good idea to do some sort of maturity assessment to say, what is best practice out there? How close are we to that? And then go into that future state. It can be very tempting. Many of us, I'm sure on the call, are builders, right? We went into data or architecture because we want to build stuff. Don't jump right to the build stage, right? A strategy should have a plan aspect according to it, right? And when you're building that future state, of course, that second bullet under the proposed future state, what's the data architecture pattern for us, or patterns in this modern world? Don't jump right into that only, right? Do the people and process support this, right? Do we have a full data governance framework to support the technology change we want to do? And of course, we do need tools and technologies, but you'll know I'm the first to say, please don't start with a tool as your solution. The tool should match what you're trying to do. And I know that should sound obvious too, but I've seen that. What's your data strategy? We're going to buy tool X, or jumping to a tool before you really understand those first phases. And then don't forget the roadmap, right? I mean, this isn't a implementation plan necessarily, but if you have a vision and without a plan to get there, it really weakens your vision, right? So what do we do? And I would say that 1 to 3 year roadmap. If you have a strategy and it's only for the next 2 weeks, is that truly strategic? And if you're planning out for the next 10 years, good luck to you. Who knows what the world's going to look like in 10 years? So I generally say something like a 3-year time frame, sometimes a 5, really depending on the org. Because to those last 2 bullets on the right under the implementation, are you planning for the culture change? And I added a section at the end of this webinar today on organizational change management, because one of the things I've learned over the years doing these, I pride myself in being a techie person. I will be the first to say that the technology and the architecture and the best practices are so important, but often if I see a strategy fail, it's generally not that I don't know, that you were in voice cod normal form instead of third normal form or something, right? It's probably that you didn't have the people and the buy-in and the culture, and that's an ongoing thing. You don't just do that once. Like, okay, I got people bought in, we can forget about that now, right? It's an ongoing, almost a marketing effort, right? So I spent a bit of time on these 4 sections. We will go through all of these 4 sections in today's webinar. Not probably to the detail I would want if I were building a strategy, but it should get, because again, that could be a whole course and is. But hopefully to give you some thoughts if any of these sections are new to you or something you haven't really thought of yet in your strategy. So the first one is why we're here, is that it is a data-driven business world. I mean, everybody is talking about data. I can't go to a party with someone not talking about something. Oh, are you working in AI? Or, are you this cool data scientist that I hear about? And does the CEO know all of the details of data when they say they want to be data driven? Probably not. That's where we fit in as data professionals, to help kind of be their coach of how to get there, but also don't knock it, right? We tend to be, I don't know why we do this in data, I feel like know-it-alls. Well, yeah, the CEO wants to be data driven and have a whole data driven initiative. Yeah, think he's ever coded SQL? Well, maybe not, but he's driving your data driven practice. Run with that. Educate the person on how and what you can do. And please don't show SQL in your data strategy. That would be completely inappropriate, right? So it is speaking the business's language, using data as an opportunity driver. And for some of us, especially who came from the tech, we tend to focus on problems. We're going to fix a thing. And that's one of my pet peeves. Or even we're looking at a backlog of issues. Like, that just makes you seem like you're on your back foot. You're just fixing things. How about a proactive strategy for all of the great opportunities we're going to solve, right? And yes, there's problems to solve, but it isn't only that. And I think sometimes switching that hat, I mean, almost by definition, a business leader, entrepreneur, tend to be opportunity folks, maybe to a fault, but are we perhaps on the other extreme with sometimes the data of only looking at the problem? So I think when you do a strategy, make sure, look at your wording. Does it match the wording? Any of my consultants that might be joining this call have probably heard me say, have you read the annual report? I have read I love reading an annual report. I'm a geek in a lot of levels. I'm proud of it. I was also an economics geek. But often the CEO, the C-level team will tell you exactly where they want to head in that annual report. Align with that with your data. And sometimes in the annual report is, we need to be a data-driven business. We need to be digital. We need to leverage AI. We need to use advanced reporting to drive our business decisions. Run with that, right? And you can mimic the words they're using in the style and the tone they're using, right? And I don't want to only be Pollyanna. Sometimes it's, hey, we're not doing well. We need to look at every cost in order to drive efficiency. That's data too, right? How do you know how to drive efficiency if you don't know your margin and cost and things like that? So data is going to be everywhere. It's your job in the strategy, how you find those touch points with the business to get them excited and show how you can make that alignment, right? When you're looking at a data strategy, I like to, we're all talking about data-driven business, digital transformation, kind of put those in kind of a similar bucket in my brain. Making the difference between, and maybe it's both in your company, but I like to make the difference between business optimization and business transformation, right? And what's the difference? So I would say business optimization is, I'm becoming that data-driven company. I'm doing what we do, but we're doing it better with data. You could argue that we've been doing that since the dawn of time. I mean, you go and look at the hieroglyphs. Some of those are really just accounting spreadsheets of how much grain people had sold back and forth early. I know I'm the only geek that goes to the pyramids and thinks, oh, there's a spreadsheet on that wall. But we've been doing data for years. What's an abacus? You're counting things, all of that. But we now, with the tools we have in data, can just do that so much better. So yeah, I'm a widget company. How do I sell more widgets with better data? I'm a nonprofit. How do we better serve our people through data? Massive opportunity there. But counter that with the thing on the right, which I do think it's only in these modern times now that we're starting to do this, where you become a data company. So on the left, it's I'm becoming data driven, doing more widgets, selling more widgets, whatever we do. Business transformation is no, I'm doing a data first company where data might be the product. We're literally monetizing information. It might be within your company a new business model, but that's not only how do we do something better, but how do we do something completely different. So many companies are grown off of, if you look at MBA programs now, or people looking to be entrepreneurs, they often just look at the data in the market. And, I think Zappos, the shoe company, started with that. He wasn't excited about shoes. He looked at, kind of trends in the market and what could he sell in a digital way online, and it happened to be shoes, right? So, think of, or maybe another way to think of this is Uber versus the taxi company. A data-driven taxi company might really know its drivers and its routes, and how to best plan its routes, and when to service your car and all that kind of thing. Uber is basically, we took data algorithms and kind of lease cars on top of it, right? It really is data is the product, and it's an entirely different business model that you couldn't have done with data. You could do one, you could do both. Just make sure. And again, I've worked with companies that do the thing on the left, we're optimizing, but then might even have like an in-house innovation lab with is there data we could use to either monetize directly, sell the data, or start a new product line based on the data we've used, that we've seen that we can do something different using data patterns and things like that. So something to think about when which or both of these are what you're doing, and you can be successful in each model. It isn't that one is better than the other. And that's what I honestly find really fun about being in data now. I think I let it drop not only in my data geek, but my first degree was economics, and I kind of love that business innovation side. And I felt early in my career I kind of chose data over businessy stuff. Well, I feel like now I don't have to choose, right? That a data strategy should absolutely be driven by your business strategy, but more and more your business strategy might be driven by your data or your data strategy, right? If we're seeing data or patterns or ideas in the data, they can change our business in fundamental ways, which I think, and if you are that type, or you're a data scientist that want to find trends and bring it back to management, like you are in an environment where people are very open to that. It's like the world's your oyster, right? That if you can marry those two, that's really where a data strategy sings. It's going to the business as sort of a data advisor, right? And say, gosh, have we thought, look, based on the data, could we do this? Or we have data that could do this. To me, makes it really fun and is a great opportunity. That said, it isn't a silver bullet, and it isn't just that you come up with this idea and run with it, or we'd all be billionaires, then that would be, easy. But really, it takes a whole framework. And this is our framework that we use. I'm kind of giving you some guidelines here, but everything should be that top-down alignment with the business strategy, because the slide I just showed, that your business strategy should align with your data strategy and vice versa. But you also need to do that bottom up. What's realistic? Is everything in a spreadsheet? Do we have legacy COBOL? Do we have real-time data streaming from IoT sensor data from our, I don't know, from our electrical grid or something, right? Or all of the above. So really understanding where you are, and then those middle layers are kind of how you manage it. Are we securing it? How do we integrate it? That's the C data message, right? That's where really they can help help you with that integration and your data planning. The metadata around it. Do we know what it means and where it's stored and who's defining it? And then that kind of middle layer of how do we I can use my words. How do we leverage data for strategic advantage? Whether it's master data like your customers, suppliers, patients, students. Are we leveraging for data warehouse, BI, analytics, and AI? Is the quality of our data good? That could be a whole effort on the amount of strategies I have started and helped run. And the first thing we work on is data quality. You can do all these great, and that's sometimes what's prompted a strategy, which is, hey, we want to do all this great AI or machine learning or analytics. And the data scientist comes back. It's like, yeah, but your data is not in the great quality to do what you're trying to do. And we're seeing a lot of business from things like AI. You can't do that on poor quality data. And to the right of that, the data architecture and modeling, you can't build on a foundation that isn't there, right? So a lot of what we're doing in the data world, data management world, is supporting that business and data strategy. And then that data governance and collaboration, that second row. I put data governance and collaboration together. I get questions on that all the time. I may be naive. I just published a Harvard Business Review article with Tom Redmond that basically this was the theme of treat people like adults. I have never in my whole career gone to a company where someone said, yeah, I came to work to try to make the data bad. People are just trying to do their day job. And generally, when given the right parameters or shown the impact of the data they put in and who's using it, they will do the right thing. And to me, governance is just getting those right people in the room so people understand how other people are impacted by the data, what regulations you might need to put in place. And again, generally people get that rather than the big stick approach of we data people are going to go tell the business what to do because we're smarter. No, it's let's all around the table, both IT and the business, get together and say, what is the right way to manage our data? I've found, and again, it might seem naive until it actually works, and then you'll see that I was right. Put in the right business language, governance is very, very, very popular. Put in the data geek language, it's not popular, right? It's just flipping that script. So I go from going to someone in finance saying, probably a terrible way to start, you're going to be a data steward now, and now you have to do extra stuff that you didn't have planned before. And they'd be like, why on earth am I in this room? But then you start talking, yeah, well, we're talking about your payment terms and your invoices and your customers. And like, well, yeah, don't touch that. That's my data. Exactly. That's why you're a steward. Then they get it, right? It's the data they're using every day, and they should be defining the rules around it. So all of this holistically are some of the pieces that you need to build out in your strategy. So, but it is a business thing at the end of the day. Again, trying to give you as many tips that I've learned and hopefully in an engaging way so you don't run into the same problem. Not that I've ever made a mistake, but were I to have ever made a mistake, it might have been on this type of thing. Is your company, and then you also have to break it down. Even people within your company have different personalities. Think of sales versus legal, right? They're going to have very different perspectives on the world. One is going to be much more offense, sales, and defense is probably your legal, and you want it that way, right? But just think of your org overall. You might be, I don't know, a brand new Silicon Valley startup, and it's all offense, or we're trying to improve profitability and growth and build our customers and get that competitive advantage. You don't want the data governance folks coming in right away, or data strategy people coming in and saying, yeah, well, we can't do that because you have 2% data quality errors on Joe Smith in Topeka, Kansas. Like you need to make sure that you are creating the right guardrails. It isn't all just move fast and break things, but you're mimicking the zeitgeist or the culture of the org. If it's all offense, well, think about that. Is your business data strategy aligned with that? We're looking at growth, profitability, et cetera, et cetera. Similarly, defense, I don't know, I could be a medical device testing software company, right? Where I'm doing heart what do you call that? Pacemakers for someone's grandfather. Could be like, well, let's just move fast and break things. Like that would just be tacky, right? Or I'm at a school, we're gonna monetize the kids' data and sell the. You don't want to go too far in the offense when it's just by definition a defense type company. Or you might be somewhere in the middle. And I know I'm stereotyping here for all of these, but just to make a point, insurance might be, yes, it's a for-profit company where we're trying to grow, but kind of by the very nature of insurance is reducing risk and thinking about risk and things like that. So something to think about of your company overall, what message is going, sometimes, and I don't love it. It feels kind of just not exciting enough for me when I see it, but your data strategy might be driven by regulatory needs, and that's going to be the message for your board. We need to do this because of regulation. We don't want to be in jail. Generally find that a bit of offense, people like the carrot, not the stick, but think of your audience, right? And I think that kind of helps both the company as a whole and the individual people you're talking to. So, and then when you make the business case, and I'm spending a lot of time on the business case side because I would say if you pick one thing I would say go heavy on the business alignment and heavy on the execution path, the roadmap, and we'll talk about that as well. And maybe I'm biased too because I think a lot of us in the call maybe naturally get more of the data management stuff, but might be a little not as used to like that business alignment and the roadmap and the change management and things like that. So, which is why I'm hitting on that a little hard. But generally, when I make the business case, again, whether it's an overt ROI with a spreadsheet and you work with finance and you actually show numbers that you're held to, or just more the storytelling aspect, they generally fall in these four categories. And I still use this slide myself when I'm trying to brainstorm of, okay, is there something in each bucket? And there probably is. Decreasing costs, I would say, is almost the easiest one to do. There's a lot of waste either in the data management group of cleaning up bad data, or we're not able to optimize the efficiency of our company because we don't have good data. We're not tracking revenue. We aren't able to really understand our product life cycle and things like that. Increasing revenue, especially, that might be harder to get an actual number because it's kind of future facing, right? These are all obviously going to be projections. But that, I think, gets you more excited. How are we going to build the next biggest widget? How are we going to be, the next leader in our market based on data? I would say number two in a strategy is super important. It's that art of the possible. And we often start our presentations with that art of the possible. This is what the world would look like if you had data in a better way, right? Reducing risk, we kind of talked about that. We're all familiar with the regulations in our industry, but it may not even be, it could be, I don't know, if you're in the food industry, can we trace any allergens, et cetera? Do we not want to have a data breach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And then the reputational risk on the right can be a big deal. We just look dumb, right? Like, and we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to be in the news. But how many of us, and in fact, I've talked about her before. There's a woman in our industry that has crimes against data, and she's all, and I do it myself. Like you have some bad customer service interaction. You're like, this was data. Like I got one this morning. Dear, customer name here, we value your individual contribution. Like, no, you didn't get my name right, or an email that just isn't targeted to you, or they have your gender wrong, or they have your last purchase wrong. Like you've actually, not, you lost trust of your customer. I mean, I know I'm a data person. I get upset, but I left a bank because I wanted to create another bank account, and they wouldn't let me have a different email for it. I'm like, no, one's a business account, one's another business, and I can't have two businesses with the same email. They're different business, right? And so I left over a data quality issue, a data management issue, or I had another financial institution and they lost one of my accounts. Like, you don't do that twice. Like, how did you lose my account? You have now, whatever answer you come back with, I don't trust you anymore. And that's a data thing, right? That they found it, it was hidden somewhere, but like that didn't make you look good. There's other financial institutions, right? So what is that? You only have one chance to make a good impression. And often that's data. When you get that right, there's your, I don't know, Netflix recommendation engine or whatever. Like they understand, you like this, I purchased this, or your Amazon recommendation engine or things like that. Gotten right, it's excellent. Gotten wrong, it's disastrous, right? So often storytelling there can help as well. Okay. So I also say, don't forget to include the risk of doing nothing, right? Because that's often, often we'll have a workshop and I'll, kind of run by with people like, well, what do you think the biggest barrier is? One guy was very blunt, and I'll never forget. He's like, apathy. I'm like, yeah, probably, right? I mean, and when you think of it, I retell my stories a lot, but I did work with one billionaire exec, and he was one of the founders, and I was trying to explain data quality and why he needed a better data management strategy, et cetera. And he looked me in the eye and he's like, are you a billionaire? Did you start a company from scratch and you're trying to tell me that my company's not going to run because I don't have data? It's been running fine so far. And the issue is it's often at that inflection point. And I've bragged in the past, I did win him over, and it was just on this exact message. What's going to get you here isn't going to get you there, right? You probably didn't have an accounting department when you started either. But now you're, a multi-billion-dollar company, you need one. And you probably, what worked when you were a startup with your data is not going to scale or help you grow, because the best companies on the planet who are doing well in the market are generally data driven, whether they overtly sing it from the rooftops or it's just something in the back end. You're not, the roof might not be falling in, and it might not be overt, which is sometimes why you do need to show some of the issues that they may not see, data quality and inefficiencies and things like that. But at a minimum, it is going to hurt you from getting where you want to be. And overtly saying that can really help that case. That's why we're doing a strategy. You're changing other areas of the business, right? You're always evolving your hiring strategy, your product strategy. You also have to evolve your data strategy. Okay, I like this, and of course, a little plug here for a DATAVERSITY report that Global Data Strategy and DATAVERSITY, I think it's been like 6 years we've done consistently this trends in data management, and this one's fairly recent from 2024. And I like this because it asked, of all initiatives in the data world, including AI, including Gen AI, all these different things, what's your biggest thing you're looking to do in the next 1 to 2 years? First one's governance. Just letting that sit for a little bit, right? When people listed between AI and everything else, what are the coolest things you want to do? It was governance. So for folks who say people don't do governance, people don't care about governance, you might rethink that. This may not be true anymore. And I would say part of the reason people are doing governance is because they tried some of those other cooler things that you see at the bottom, this self-service analytics and the data science and the AI and all of that. Can't do that without a great foundation, so they kind of went back, right? But data strategy, which was my point, was number 2, right? And I'm super happy with that. I'm not surprised by that. It's a big part of what we spend our days doing. But I do think it's that, I think, a good perfect storm of the business knowing that they can grow their organization through data, and the technology and what's available now with data and data management is at an inflection point that companies are realizing, companies, nonprofits, schools, it isn't just, again, the widget companies out there are realizing that to really have that competitive advantage, you need to be strategic about your use of data, which I think is awesome. So speaking of governance, again, all of these can and could be a whole course, a whole webinar, but just again, when you're thinking, if you're on this webinar because you need to be doing a data strategy, do I have a section for this slide, right? Because again, part of your strategy does need to be governance. It is a key part of excuse me, continuing to have that good foundation and getting the buy-in with people. So the first one we already kind of beat to death is that vision and strategy. Is your data vision in line with your company's vision? And then we kind of call it the 4 pillars. Do you have the right people and org structure for governance? That's going to be your data owners, your data stewards. Do you have committees? How are those committees formatted? How do you make group decisions? Do you both have in the second column there, have the right data governance processes? How do we come up with common definitions? How do we handle security and privacy? And how do people log issues and things like that? And then even better, are our business processes truly aligned with data at every step of the way? We do a lot of, we're data people at our company, and we do a lot of process modeling because that's how data is entered in, right? That's often a data problem is really a hidden process problem, right? So it's twofold: business processes supporting data, and then the data governance processes supporting your business processes. Not to talk in circles, but it's kind of both. Data management measures, that's like the Dataversity world, right? All the stuff a lot of us probably do every day. It'll be a little light on this presentation because I think A, we cover it the rest of the year. B, I think you know it. That's a huge foundation of your data strategy, but don't just stop there. And we'll talk more about that. If you don't have all the other stuff around it, the vision, the people, the culture, then you can have the best data catalog in the world. No one's going to look at it, right? And then similarly, tools and platforms. I mean, I came from, if anyone knows me from my deep, dark past, I was a tool vendor. I built tools, I sold tools, I did all of that. And I'll be the first to say, don't start there. Like, you need a good tool, but it should support what you're trying to do. And I know that's obvious, but too many of us get enamored by the tool and say, I've told this story before too, but I had a good friend and customer up in Canada, and I met him at a Gartner conference, and he needed to do governance, and he basically said, so what tool do I buy? And I said, Mike, do not start there. That, like, you need to do all this other framework. We did it, and understood that a tool was only a piece of it. At the very end of a very successful project, he goes, can I buy my tool now? Yes, you can buy your tool now. But like, that shouldn't have been the main thing, right? And then the culture and communication. This is built upon people getting buy-in. Data is as much a people thing as a tech thing, and forgetting that is at your peril. And I've probably learned that one the hard way too. Putting that first. In fact, we're doing a couple now with clients that we've learned to kind of start first with the people. Like, we'll do a tech assessment. We do a people assessment, not like in a creepy way, but who would be really excited about this to be some of our first followers and first early adopters, who might be too busy for this, who might really not be into this at all. Do we leave them alone? Do we bring them along for the journey? Really getting ahead of that can go a long way, rather than building this huge. It is not true that build it and they will come. I'll just put that out there, right? You might be lucky, but generally you've built the thing probably because people wanted it, or helping them understand how they use it and things like that. Okay, so when one builds their data governance structure, pay close attention to your org. So the data governance org, there's an example on the right. This is almost a classic DAMA Bach, where you have a steering committee and a governance committee and things like that. We do build them this way, especially if you're a larger company or a more hierarchical company. It can work really well. Again, back to my example earlier, I'm a Silicon Valley startup. You probably don't want a 6-layer, steering committee, and it might appear too heavy. Even it might be what you need, but maybe your company, the word committee is anathema. It's like maybe we'll call it a team or a group or a pod. I don't know. So really think, does this org structure fit within the culture or work against it, right? So you don't just say, well, here's what the book said. Not saying you folks would, but I do see that too much. That it doesn't always look like this. And I'll just use an extreme example. And I'm, stereotyping all over the place here. But I kind of learned this was excuse me, a manufacturing company in Latin America. And it was a big, heavy, manufacturing, almost your definition of macho, right? And I was thinking, okay, manufacturing, generally process driven, kind of something like this. And I considered them friends and we were very close. And they kind of go, yeah, in North America, Gringa, that doesn't kind of work here. We're more, two things they said to us, I kid you not. One of them is like, we don't like these really heavy, dark colors. We would prefer more of pastel colors, and we work together as teams, and then we work in a more agile. So they literally called this the data governance flower, right? And it was more that each group was a petal in the flower, and they would work together, and this worked really well because that's how their group worked. They found it was all about the data innovation for digital transformation. They would have a problem, they would solve it together as a team, they would iterate, and they would build. I wouldn't have come in to a big manufacturing company in Latin America and made the data governance flower as my first choice. But when I listened to the culture, that's what they wanted. It made a lot of sense, and it's been super successful. And they're, to my knowledge, still doing this because that's how their company worked. They worked in agile sprints, and their governance had to match that. This wouldn't have worked, right? And so your culture, what might work. Don't totally say, well, my culture is we don't want to do governance. Like, yeah, that doesn't fly. Anyone who's a parent, I was like, well, my culture is to not do my homework, Mom. That doesn't work. But do listen to the kind of the ways of working your company. You're going to get a lot more buy-in. Okay, so that was the people part. This is an architecture webinar. I don't want to forget the architecture because that is a huge part of your strategy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of thought. But if you build the architecture without thought to everything I've talked about before, it's going to look like this staircase, just kind of built out of context, right? Because it should support your business alignment. Do you need real-time data streaming data from machine data, or do you need a monthly financial report? Like, those are very different architectures. And part of the architecture, when I think of, say, a metadata catalog, is how it supports your governance. Do I need full lineage, or do I just need a friendly data catalog, a data glossary for business people in the front end? Like, think all of that stuff through before you start architecting. What makes this fun and also stressful, and this is why we exist as architects, is that there's a wide array of choices out there. And I'm working with a customer now, and it's making all of our collective heads hurt because they're literally, and you may be jealous, like literally able to do a complete greenfield rewrite of a new system. And we're like, oh, what's the best thing to use? There's so many choices now. It isn't just a relational on-premise database, right? It may end up being that, so you'll see there's a lot of different options, from graph to NoSQL to, again, real-time streaming. That said, from the survey, people today, in 2024, 69% are still, or maybe always, using relational databases on-prem. About a little bit less, but the same amount are using cloud-based relational databases. And don't even get me started. Keep me up at night. 66% self-identified as using spreadsheets as a data platform. A spreadsheet's a fine thing. It is not a data platform. Appreciate the honesty, but this comes up every year is like number 2 or 3. So yeah, if you're a database vendor on the call, your biggest competitor is probably Excel. But appreciate the honesty. But anyway, those first two, I will say that the demise of the relational database is overrated. They are still good for what they're good for, which is referential integrity and data quality and all of that. Are there other choices out there? Absolutely, yes. And if your data strategy is only looking at an on-prem relational database, I would say stretch your limits a little bit, and are you maybe not looking at something that could help you more? So this slide I kind of find interesting, and it's always when we do this survey every year, it's kind of the one I always want to look at first. It's where do people think, well, the previous one of what are people using today, but it tends to be the same year every year of relational databases, but it's what are people looking at in the future? And I found this one kind of interesting this year. Number one is still your relational database, but very much in the cloud. And that aligns with what I've seen a lot of companies, but not all. It isn't your only choice, but to put data in the cloud. And then also kind of your cloud object store, your data lake, or excuse me, these are a select all that apply. So I am seeing a lot of, and we build a lot ourselves of like a data lake house environment where it's the best of both worlds. You have your relational, you can do your database and your kind of more raw data storage. Relational on-prem is still number 3, not number 1 anymore, but number 3. And then people are spreading out. The other thing, and I didn't bore you with all the trends year over year, this is getting less spiky and more of an even distribution that people are trying different things. It isn't all like relational databases, then a couple people are using XML, right? And this aligns with what I'm seeing or recommending with my clients too. Can we try a key value pair where it makes sense, or a document database, or graph databases, and we're trying to see like relationships between customers and things. So I think it's a slow migration because these are real systems you're building. You have a sandbox and play around, but really think carefully. And then things like if you look towards the bottom, legacy systems, mainframe, COBOL are still there too. I mean, these are what are you planning to be using in the next 1 or 2 years? COBOL's still there, right? So learn about those copybooks or get a tool that can read them. But yeah, this is what makes a data architect a validly complex role, because there's a lot out there, and kind of knowing that fit for purpose informed by all the stuff we talked about in the beginning, which is the business drivers. Is there a need for a real-time streaming database or not? We work with one client, a big financial institution, and the tech team at the time, before we came in, was like, you need everything streaming. And the accountants were going crazy. Please don't stream our financial reports. Like, those are things we kind of want in batch to validate and go through, right? So that was kind of an extreme example of the tech team not aligned with the business. With the same token, I'm trying to see the sensor data from my, I don't know, my energy wind farm. Once a month probably isn't enough through a batch file, right? I probably want that real-time streaming to see when something went down, right? Anyway, some thoughts to think of, kind of fun to look at. I would say with everything, this is a bit of an eye chart, but think of the fit for purpose for all of these. And it's partly, I do these a lot, and partly to tell the story to my customers, or if your customer is the business, for a strategy. We're doing this thing where, or even explain what you're trying to do rather than pick the technology first. I'm trying to, I don't know, this was on the left bottom, we were working with a company that the product actually had a foot warmer, and they wanted to track when people turned on the foot warmers, right? That's an IoT thing. But rather than going to the management and saying, we need an IoT enabled platform, but like, when your customers kind of turn on the foot warmer of the chair you're selling, that we can actually see who's doing that when. Like, that's a better story to tell, right? And then for each of these, am I using a fit for purpose solution? And I've been around long enough that I've seen almost all of these like a mix and match puzzle. I've seen master data management for massive unnamed multinational corporations in a spreadsheet. I've seen them in SaaS. I've seen, I know, people trying to do analytics with with this spreadsheet, so none of these use cases are wrong, and probably none of the tools are wrong. What I find that tends to happen is they're mixed and matched in the wrong way. So I kind of like to show both an as is and to be, but kind of telling the story of how you're using it for whatever company you're working for. And again, rather than going, I don't know, on the upper right there, a business, we need a business glossary and a data catalog, going to the business and saying, yeah, we've seen each region calculates total sales differently. We should probably align that and publish it out somewhere, you think? That probably the business would be more bought in that, or I don't know, people are getting confused with a marketing lead or a qualified lead or whatever. Can we put up somewhere that we defined on that? That makes a lot more sense than these kind of geeky tech words. So just a thought there. And then as with everything, it's a balance in life, right? And I've seen both extremes. Unfortunately, from my way of thinking, I've seen too much on the right that can't we just move fast and break things? Can't we just, oh gosh, we really need data quality. I even had one client said, we don't need data quality. We'll just make it up in volume. And okay, maybe that might have made sense, but when you actually think of that, so we're looking at patient data and we don't know their gender and we're trying to do prostate surgery. Like that doesn't make, so we have more bad data. Like that doesn't make sense, but I've seen it all, right? So if you don't have anything, it's just chaos and stuff will not get done. This is where when you make the business case, you are spending so much time. What's the favorite quote that I use all the time? If you don't have time to do it right, do you have time to do it again? Because you will, right? So that's chaotic. At the same time, you don't want so much planning and academic that it takes. I don't see as much of this anymore. It might be the legacy we had in the old days of like, we can't make any design decision until we have a fully attributed enterprise logical data model with 40,000 attributes on it. That's just not going to be right as well. So the right balance between that is what makes sense for your business. Again, if you're a medical device testing software, I hope you're somewhere more on the left. But if you're, a startup lemonade stand, maybe a little bit more on the right is fine. But just think of that. You don't want to be too far in either direction, or it's just not going to be efficient either way. How one builds the roadmap. This is the tricky part. It's an art and a science, right? Because there's a lot we just talked about. So how do you do all of the stuff I just talked about and then explain that in a clear, concise way in a couple slides to management? My consultants, if they're on the call, are probably rolling their eyes like, I know, Donna, we're trying to get this done by tomorrow. But that is what will help it make it think. And just think of anything you're trying to do, like someone that has a vision and then they can explain the steps to get there in a clear way. That's how people get buy-in. That's how they change the world, right? So again, to simplify it, I like to break down my kind of roadmap strategies into the simple who, what, where, why, when, how, why, right? So the why was all the business stuff we just talked about. Who's going to benefit from this? Who do we roll this out to first? Like obviously, often these basic questions haven't been answered when I look at a strategy that hasn't been effective, right? Who's going to execute it? Who's going to benefit from it? All of that. The how in the lower left, how are you going to organize your governance? How are you going to do your architecture? The what on the lower right, which is what data do we manage? How are we going to manage it? Is it real-time batch, data lakehouse, data fabric, all of that? And then the when is the smack dab in the middle, which is what we do when we plan out a roadmap for this. What is the timing? You can't do it all at once. You can't take forever. Like this is a hard thing to do. And then you have to make it simple. So how do you do that? But I would say, especially at the strategy level, it is a strategy, err towards the storytelling of the vision. Because think of anything, if this were climbing Everest, right? How does anyone get anyone to climb? I'm a mountain climber and I still would not climb Everest. It's hard. People die. It takes a long time, right? Without that, with the vision to be like, hey, we're the first DATAVERSITY team to ever get to the top of Everest and put up the DATAVERSITY flag, right? Oh, we're really excited. And it's going to take months and things are going to happen. But somebody leading that journey is very clear what happens I mean, I have never climbed Everest and I can picture the different camps in my head. There's base camp and there's camp one and there's, right? And they almost have like mythical status and everybody knows what you're doing at every time. We're at base camp for 2 weeks, sitting in a tent, just letting our blood do its thing to get more oxygen, right? Without explaining that, people would have mutiny. It just sounds terrible. So it's going to be the same way, with your data management program. It's going to be exciting. There's a great upside. There's going to be dead bodies along the way, stepping over in your climb. But you have to kind of get ahead of that and be really clear. The other thing is what everyone's role is, right? You can't halfway up Everest saying, oh, who's cooking dinner and who's carrying the stuff and who has the map? Like, you should have that really clear at the beginning and have kind of contingent plans. So think of that as do we have a vision? Are we all excited? Do we know when we're doing it and why? And really let everyone into the why. Be clear where you are with your org maturity. I would say, this is our maturity assessment. There's others out there, but it's like running a marathon, right? Anyone in the world can run a marathon. People have proven that people with disabilities or people who are out of shape can run a marathon. But be really clear: am I already running a 3.5-hour marathon? I just want to break a record, or have I never run before? And I'm sitting on the couch. How you would train is very, very different. And what your goal might be. Is your goal to win? Is your goal to finish? And so this is the same thing. It's where are you today and where do you want to be? You don't have to be excellent in everything. It might just be you want to be just good enough to sell more widgets, or you want to be best in class. So think of that as you plan out your roadmap. And then find a quick win. And I know that's probably an overused term, and I use this very specifically. The main point is you have to show early value or you're not going to get continued value. That first win to get everyone to understand it is super important. I would say though, I almost don't want to use the word quick win. It's not a quick fix, right? It's not duct tape on things just so you can move fast. It's the first brick in the foundation so that after you get buy-in, the next brick fits in and the next brick. And that's why it needs to be planned out in a roadmap. It's not just, oh, let's go start doing stuff. It's a carefully architected series of quick wins. And just one other thing in terms of I've seen a lot, a roadmap isn't a laundry list, and it's back to that vision, right? What are you going to do? We're going to climb Everest. You'd probably talk. We're going to be the first DATAVERSITY team to climb Everest, and we're going to do it the fastest. It's going to be awesome. You don't say, well, first we're going to buy a tent, and then we're going to, it isn't just a list of things. It really is a theme. You're thinking of the what's in it for me for different stakeholders, what they care about, what they're going to get from it. I often, when we put ours together, I have a whole swim lane on business value at this step, because these will get technical. Once we build the AI-enabled real-time data streaming platform, you're going to get this, right? Or we're going to build reference data, and now you can send out your invoices because the product codes are right. Something to make it really clear. And then, do you have the right people to support? Do you need consulting? Do you need to train in-house? Do you need to hire? Really being realistic about that. So probably the most important section I'm going to have to rush through because I didn't plan my time. But just to think about, right, is the culture and the organizational change management. I just gave a whole strategy presentation, and I work for a company with strategy in the name, and I'm having a slide saying culture will eat strategy for breakfast. But I do believe that if you can have the best laid plan, but if people aren't, you're raising the flag and running and no one's coming with you, it's not going to be successful. So the more you can make this a collaborative effort where everyone feels like it's our strategy, you're going to be much more successful, right? So you're really tasked with changing the culture of the org. And that's it's as big, if not bigger, than your data strategy. You may need help. This might be something you want to do, but you have to do it. I'll just jump to one slide that really hit home with me, and then I may skip some slides to be able to get some questions in. This one was huge for me because we as data people tend to go right to like learning and knowledge, and what hit home to me is anything that's new. We say we want new things in our life, but we really don't, because as soon as someone moves our cheese and we get all upset when things change. I'm the same one. Every time my iPhone gets an upgrade, I get all upset, and then I probably like that feature later, but it was different, right? But then we as data people tend to feel, oh, then I need to tell people more about that feature. I need to just educate them more about data and they'll get it. We kind of miss this first few stages, which is the awareness. Why do I need to do that's aligning with the business value, right? This is a cool new thing and this is how it's going to help you. And then maybe, why am I motivated to learn about this? It might help my job. It's going to help me do something better. Or maybe I'm just seeing that everyone else in the org is starting to talk about it. Then I might go to your lunch and learn. But I just feel we as data people tend to write, well, if I just tell them more about third normal form, they're going to be excited. They probably won't. We often skip that first and second, and then we often skip the final one, which is the reinforcement, that people almost need to be reminded of success and value, and this is a good thing. We need to keep doing it, right? You don't go on a diet and then do it once, and then for the rest of it's just a different way of eating for the rest of your life, or exercising, or whatever you do, right? It isn't a one and done thing. It should be part of the organizational DNA. So just something to think of, because I think we don't think enough about that in the data world. I'm going to, and I apologize, my fault for not being, but going through all the slides, it really is a marketing effort. And just one takeaway to think of is it's often fear, right? So if you're going to launch a strategy, think of just two things that maybe will help you guide it. Of one, what do you think is the biggest fear of change you might face? And it isn't they don't like you or they don't like data. The people are probably just, this is new, right? And then on the other side, what would be the biggest excitement, why people would think this is the next new cool thing? That might help just kind of guide the rest of your strategy. So with that, I just wanted to kind of sum up what we have gone through, which is the business alignment, current state, future state, roadmap, and then organizational buy-in. And with that, I will open it up to Q&A with a quick plug to join us next month for building the right architecture for analytics and reporting. And we do this for a living if you need help. And then I will open it up for Q&A.
We've got a lot of great questions and a lot of great interaction on chat. I think we should be able to get to a couple questions here, and I've highlighted a couple of my favorites. So, quickly, what are some of the strategies for generating business expert buy-in, assuming they're not business geeks? Or sorry, assuming they're not data geeks.
Yeah, I would start with some of that stuff that we just talked about, the what's in it for them. And we tend, and I do it myself, I have to catch myself. We would go to them and say, we're going to build this new data system to do, flip the script. I understand that you're trying to do a new marketing campaign we can help you with, right? So it's a bit on the onus of the data person who asked the question of get what's in the head of what the business needs and then frame how they can help you with that. I think that is the number one thing that has helped me in the past of put yourself in their shoes and think, how can I help them with data?
And then the other question, and Jared chime in on this one as well. Can you speak to a successful way to deal with shadow IT?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead, Don. No,
no,
you
go
start,
ahead.
Don.
I'll let
Go.
you. I'll let you go, Jared.
Okay. Yeah. So I think probably establishing good data management practices is going to be the first step there. That's a lot of what we see in our organization internally and then with our customers as well. So just understanding who is touching data, where they're touching it, why they're touching it, and then you can start to implement a strategy. You can start to get more tactical, which is where CData sits into, well, how are you actually going to manage that data? How are you going to surface it to the people that need it? What did you set up, in your initial strategy? What exists now that the people that are touching data without going through IT directly, what was missing that they felt like they needed that you can then implement and then use that idea moving forward as, your data ecosystem expands.
Mhm. Donna, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I have a long answer. I'll give you the short one, which I think what I agree with what Jared said. First, listen to why they're doing it and solve it. Definitely governance is part of the answer with the stick, like set up rules that can't happen. But even better is let's find out why that's happening and can we bring that and solve the problem that they're trying to solve, and then likely it goes away. Easier said without a million people, but I think it's a bit of the carrot and the stick. The more you can listen and try to solve those problems often helps.
Excellent. Well, that's all we have time for today. So thank you again, Donna, and thank you, Jared and CData for sponsoring this presentation. And thank you, everybody in chat and Q&A for being so energetic and amazing as always. And we'll hope to see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.